Hello, in this video we will discuss about the intermittent fasting and Ramadan fasting. So the intermittent fasting is differently as compared to the Ramadan fasting because the Ramadan fasting required the disciplinary duration of fasting, which that is due to the Islamic religious, which that is provide the fasting throughout the month for the adaptation of keto ketosis as well as the consumption of more reserve food, more reserved nutrient in our body, for example fat and glycogen. So let's begin to understand. Here is the sahar, which that is the before morning 3 to 4 a.m., which that is the eating time, while after that go into the proceeding process for 4 to 10 a.m. and 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., which that is we can classify in the three phases. So first phase is the carbohydrates, protein and fats consumption through food, and this is the nutrients rich period which that provide the energy, and in this way it is the anabolic path, and in this way the glycogenesis and the lipogenesis will be occur because the fats as well as the glucose will be supply in this time, and it means the carbohydrate and protein and fat is used for the anabolism. So in this way the endocrinology, if we will discuss, so the pancreas innervate in this process. In this way the insulin will increase while the glucagon will be decreased. Due to the insulin production the anabolism will be occur. So the anabolism is basically used for the synthesis of protein through insulin, as well as because the insulin used for the amino acid, fat and glucose move into the cell, and the catabolism will be decreased. While on the next phase, the 4 to 10 a.m., in this duration, the carbohydrate will be consumed as energy and the glycogen depletion because the more sugar is not supplying, and the glycogenolysis and lipolysis will begin. And in this way the glucagon drastically increase while the insulin will be decreased, and the sympathetic nervous system will lead to increase, which that will lead to increase the energy production through a lipolysis. So the last step is of before the opening of the fast is the lipolysis, and fat reduction and dehydration will be occur, and proteolysis as well as the energy decline phase and lipolysis due to glucagon epinephrine work. So in this way, but in this way here is the intermittent fasting. If we will discuss the fasting in which you can drink sugarless water, coffee. In this case you can lose your mineral vitamin through excretion, but the Ramadan fasting require the dehydration, so the restriction of also water, which that will lead to homeostasis best, as well as the decreasing of the potassium and sodium depletion through urination. So the more vitamin and mineral we reserve during the case of Ramadan fasting as compared to the intermittent fasting, because intermittent fasting will decrease the mineral and vitamin because the restriction of calorie. So it means the restriction of calorie, with the restriction of calorie also the mineral and vitamin will be depleted due to the intake of water more. So here is the blood vessel. This is there are different type of organs, for example liver cell, hepatocyte, stomach, gastrointestinal tract. Here is the other peripheral tissue, and this is the adipose tissue. This is the adrenal gland. This adrenal gland is very important for the sympathetic nervous system, while the infected cells are also present. And here is the blood vessel. So let's begin to understand with the mechanism, and there are different things which that is occurring during the fasting. This is the Ramadan fasting we are understanding first. So this is the glucose will be increased after the eating during the first phase, and in this way the hyperglycemia will be occur, will lead to increase the insulin. After the binding in the insulin, the glycogen, little glycogen occur in the adipose tissue and fat storage in the triacylglycerol. While it will be converted after the passage of time through a human sensitive lipase enzyme and the glycogen phosphorylase enzyme used to produce the glucose and free fatty acid. But remember, the glycogen is more in the muscle, so remember that. So here is the glucose will be moved into the blood circulatory system. After the hypoglycemia will lead to isoglycemia in the blood with the passage of time. And this is the free fatty acid used after the beta oxidation as energy in the Krebs cycle through mitochondria. In the brain, use fat as a fuel, muscle use fats as a fuel, and other tissue is also used for the construction through a growth hormone rather than the insulin production. So the growth hormone will also increase. So the growth as well as repair mechanism, which that will also increase the epinephrine as well as the glucagon with the passage of time when we will going more starvation period. And in this way, the pancreas here produce insulin will bind with the insulin receptor will lead to influx of the glucose and fat. So here is the glucagon, which that is produced after the passage of time when the hypoglycemia will be occur. So the glucagon will bind with a specific tissue. After the binding with a specific tissue will lead to increase the free fatty acid as well as the glucose. So the glucose will move again into the blood circulatory system for the isoglycemic situation. While here is the adrenal gland. This adrenal gland, due to the sympathetic nervous system, produce the epinephrine and cortisol. This epinephrine and cortisol is basically used for the anti-allergic reaction, and in this way the cytokines and growth factors which that will be produced from the infected cell will be inhibited, and in this way the inhibition of the cytokines and growth factors will lead to apoptosis because the growth and proliferation will be inhibited. So the no inflammation more. So the fasting is important for the inflammation inhibition. Inflammation means the inflamed area. It means the infected cell will lead to increase the redness, and their inflammation will lead to pain, which that will be inhibited. While here the adipose tissue produce the fatty acid with the passage of time, and this adipose tissue produce the fatty acid and glycerol will move into the liver after the beta oxidation to lead to produce the ketones body from the liver, and this ketones body is the alternate form of the glucose, and this is the type of glucose, and because it is the water soluble like a glucose, and that will lead to inhibit the glucose, while the when hyperglycemia will lead to inhibit the ketone body. So the fluctuation with the passage of days, which that will lead to adaptation of ketones as well as the glucose usage. So the both property will be enhanced. Enhance. So insulin resistance such as type 2 diabetes will be decreased because the insulin receptor will be repaired, because the chance of the repairing due to the insulin inhibition, so the insulin bind with the insulin receptor will not occur, but in this way the repairing mechanism will be enhanced. While here the fatty acid will be also used as the low density lipoprotein empty formation, and in this way the empty will become a filled, and on the other hand the basically is the use the cholesterol which that will be absorbed from the different several tissue, for example other peripheral tissue. After the absorption will lead to become an LDL fill. This LDL fill will move into the liver, so this is the cholesterol cycle will be occur. But remember that LDL will move through a scavenger receptor into the liver. After the movement into the liver, so the extra cholesterol will be excreted, and extra cholesterol go in gastrointestinal tract, and some cholesterol again can be reabsorbed, so the reabsorption can be occur. But important thing is you need to understand through a bile that the cholesterol, extra cholesterol will be excreted through a bile. So remember about that. During the fasting, basically the triacylglycerol will be increased. So normally it will not infected or not a disease causing triacylglycerol, but it is normally increased, but the passage of time it will be decreased. So the low density lipoprotein will be increased, but the low density lipoprotein containing triacylglycerol, which that will lead to use for the several tissue beta oxidation, and that is why the insulin will be decreased, but the lipolysis will increase, lead to increase the low density lipoprotein, but this low density lipoprotein will provide the fatty acid into the tissue. For example, muscle and mental health increase, so the brain prefer more ketones as well as fatty acid for repair the cell. So the repairing will more increase. So here the water decrease due to the dehydration, and this dehydration will lead to intermittent fasting will be inhibited because of continuously water consumption. But in this way, the activity of nephron will decrease. So in this way, the nephron repair. So this nephron repair inhibition through intermittent fasting. But the Ramadan fasting will promote the repair of nephron because the less working for excretion of the water. So the water will be decreased, so the excretion will be decreased. And in this way, the reusable amino acid as well as the amine group will be enhanced. On the other hand, the reserve of the sodium and potassium will be more. So the hypoglycemia will lead to low blood pressure, which that is ultimately repair the blood vessel and ultimately normalize. So thanks for watching. This was the intermittent fasting and Ramadan fasting. Thanks.